if I take a first pass at, the question, the answer choices, and something doesn't jump out to me, I'll give myself one more pass, and then if nothing clicks, just pick what I think is best and move on.
All right, welcome everyone, and welcome to the Seven Stage Podcast. Today I have a wonderful person in front of me. Hi, Levi. Do you want to say hi to your audience?
Hi, everyone. Nice to get acquainted with everyone. Some of you guys might know me from live classes, but this is my very first time on the podcast, so super, super excited to be here.
And I'm excited to have you here. It's also like my fourth or fifth time, so this is going to be really fun. So I just want to get started with, maybe how it started, maybe a little bit of, issues that you encountered, how you overcame it. It's always inspiring to hear how other people overcame because whatever issues you may have had, Levi, I'm sure somebody else is facing the same thing. So let's just dive in. So Levi, maybe just the beginning, what made you interested in LSAT? How did it start?
Absolutely. So, I have an undergrad degree in music of all things, and I was actually in graduate school to go into classical music performance. And then about halfway through that, I realized that that probably wouldn't be the best career path for me for a lot of different reasons. And then I'd been interested in going to law school, kind of been something on the back burner. So I figured out that, okay, that's what I want to do. And I kind of decided to take the plunge for that. So I just kind of actually I withdrew from grad school one day, took my first practice LSAT, and I was kind of off to the races. So
Amazing. That's kind of what we all do is just take one test and see where we're at. So, how was it, the first few weeks of studying? What happened? Where were you scoring? If you don't mind diving a little bit longer into that.
absolutely, yeah. So the very first one, I took my diagnostic. I got a 153 on it, which, I'm happy to start there for sure. Absolutely. And the biggest thing I felt when I first started was just very lost in general. It was talk about like necessary assumptions and sufficient assumptions and talking about philosophy, and I'd never heard of any of this stuff, so I was quite confused. The very first thing I did actually was get a 7-stage subscription because I'd heard about it online and read it and all that good stuff. So I started powering through the core curriculum, especially the fundamentals, foundations, learning about conditional logic, all that good stuff. And that was kind of my starting point, 153, and then trying to go up from there.
That makes sense. Same thing. I also started with a subscription, which is kind of where everyone starts with. So I'm so glad you started there. How long did it take you to get through the co-curriculum and what happened afterwards? Because that's when the real journey starts. Once you're done with co-curriculum and then now what?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I've told this story in live classes before. I didn't finish the entire core curriculum at first. I got like halfway through and I was like, I know what I'm doing. Like I've got this. And then I just started doing a bunch of tests. And then I eventually got very stuck doing that because I was like, I bet I know everything. And it wasn't until later that I actually came back and finished it that I was like, I missed a lot of the stuff, and there are a lot of things that I really thought I knew that I didn't. So this is a plug. Don't say like, this is easy, I've got it. It will probably bite you later. So
I completely agree. So many times students are sent right back to co-curriculum. They think they know enough because you know more than you probably did before
yeah,
when you first started. Good. So at what point did you realize, okay, maybe even going back to co-curriculum
mhm,
has not been enough? And did you ever get stuck anywhere?
absolutely. I was so stuck for a very long time. I studied a ton, and I eventually managed to kind of push into like the low 170s, kind of high 160s. And I mean, that was like a brick wall for me. I was stuck around that score band for somewhere around 3 or 4 months, which was agonizing because I was studying so much. I was doing, all the quote unquote right stuff. And I felt so stuck. So yes, I was probably half of my study journey was just trying to overcome that plateau right there.
So let's just dive a little bit in. What did you think was not effective? Like, what were you doing that, although maybe was good studying, in hindsight, was not using your time effectively?
Absolutely. So, first off, part of it was I hadn't finished the core curriculum. And I very stubbornly didn't want to go back to it. Go back to it, please. Like I could have learned so much stuff. A really big part of it was I kind of skipped around and I really avoided the portions that talked about causal logic. Because I thought conditional logic was super, super cool. So I did stuff, about must be truths, like sufficient assumptions, parallels, stuff like that. And so I just treated honestly the whole test like it was conditional logic. And I got really good at those questions, but when that really wasn't showing up in a question, I was really lost, and it just felt like I was like using the complete wrong mental framework for it. So finally convincing myself it's not all conditional logic. I do have to go back to the basics a little bit. Was a really, really big point for me.
So what was it? Like when you were missing causal questions, what was your thought process? Because so many students miss that, like you're
Yeah,
missing the same questions, but
yeah.
I do see a resistance to go back. So what was the thought process that made you stuck on not going back?
I mean, just to be completely blunt, probably just stubbornness and pride. I was like, I can figure this out. I'll do it on my own. If I just ram my head into this wall enough times, I'll break through. I mean, I was getting better, like glacially slowly doing that. But kind of swallowing my pride a little bit helped. This is a really fun story. I had a study partner that I met up with towards the end of my kind of study process before I took the test, who was really good at questions that were not conditional. And kind of looking at another approach, seeing that I was really stuck in that mindset was very helpful. Actually, shout out, this is actually one of our 7 Sage tutors. Her name is Emily Bishab. Shout out to her. Really helped me out there. But so kind of a combination of swallowing my pride, getting a little bit of an outside perspective as well, kind of helped me break past that.
So Levi's first advice is swallow your pride, go back to co-curriculum if
Yeah,
you need
yeah,
to.
yeah. Very
I
important.
definitely agree. And the second one is maybe a study partner. Maybe you can dive a little bit in. I definitely agree with that. A study partner can make, I credit a lot of my growth with that. So can you dive a little bit in and how, and maybe what did she say exactly
Yeah.
that, started the whole mindset of I need to do something different?
Absolutely. So, what we started out doing, we just said, okay, let's go through some sections together. Let's do them on time. Like, let's just kind of go back to the basics a little bit. And let's just see how we each approach these questions. That was very eye-opening for me because I was just so strictly like regimented. It's all, conditionals and diagramming. And she was like honestly on the complete other end of the spectrum. I think I helped her a little bit with conditionals and she helped me a little bit with not conditionals, but actually seeing someone else who was scoring kind of in the same score band that I was, how they approach some questions completely differently, just like seeing them actually walk through their process, super, super helpful. Because we were so different, literally so different.
Did she ever tell you you need to go back to co-curriculum just straight up? I wonder.
She, she didn't. I think we were also both really stubborn and figuring out, what's going on our own. But eventually, when I went back to it, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of missing some stuff here.
So you went back, and what happened right after? Let's say you reviewed it. When did it actually start clicking in? Because I think there's a lag point a little bit. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. And that was still, I forget the exact time zone. I mean, it was, I don't know, maybe a month, a little bit more out from my test. But I went back. The first thing I felt was that I was like, I felt a little silly, just because it, I mean, if you are really good at causal logic, it really provides you this nice, neat framework. Like for example, I didn't know that, oh, if you have a phenomenon that's set up in an author's proposed hypothesis, all this stuff about undermining that hypothesis or alternative explanation. I didn't know any of that. And then finally figuring out that those questions have like a nice, neat framework. I mean, just like conditionals, I felt a little silly. I was like, I really should have known that already at this point.
Good, good. Once you were done, did your score suddenly improve? Like you saw like a drastic change or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, kind of around that period. I finally broke into sort of like the mid to high 170s after that. I think something else that also helped me was I was really burnt out, just banging my head into that wall, and I took a little bit of a break. And then I started, going back to the basics in the core curriculum, studying with Emily, and then it kind of finally finally started clicking, kind of the new approach after that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like a break is so underrated.
So
We
much.
I think we tend to think the more we do, the better, but sometimes there's a point. But how did you know you needed a break rather than a motivation speech? Like a lot of times people are confused about, what do we need? Am I just tired and lazy, better diet, or is it that I need a break?
And that is such a good question. And I'll just say for everyone out there, I still don't have the perfect answer to that question. Like, there are still times where I'm like, do I just need to hype myself up more? Like, am I actually burnt out? But the reason I really knew that I needed a break is I just felt like I hit a mental wall. It got to the point where I was looking at questions, I was doing questions, and I was just taking nothing away from them. I just felt I was doing questions to say I studied today. I'm punching the clock, like checking in, but I wasn't really learning anything, and I didn't feel like I was actually engaging with it. So I just I was so exhausted and burnt out at that point. I was just like, I didn't intend for it to be a 2-week break,
Yeah.
but it was because I just felt like I needed it. So um I tried the motivational speech thing first, but when that didn't work, I was like, okay, well, we'll just kind of step back for a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe as Levi's saying, try a motivational speech. If that doesn't work and you're not taking away anything, take a break. It's so underrated.
Yeah.
It sometimes also maybe changes the way you study. Was there any point in like maybe when you started in 150s, you were studying differently, and then once you got into 160s, you were studying differently? Can you elaborate the differences?
For all the students I've ever taught, this is something that I do try and really, really highlight is you're studying, it's going to change at some point. The way that you study and review questions in the 150s is going to be different from the 160s, is going to be different from the 170s. So expect to have your study process change essentially. And that was very, very true for me because when I was especially in the 150s, it was all just like foundational fundamental work because I didn't know the basics and I had to figure out the basics. And it was a lot less application of that and more just figuring out what the heck to do. But as I move closer into 170s, less of that fundamental foundational work and more just let's take the things I know, apply it to a bunch of questions, and see where I'm messing up and seeing where I'm going wrong. I mean, and not to beat the point into the ground, but again, the reason that didn't really work past a certain point, I didn't have that foundational skill. I felt like I was trying to build a house on sand or something.
Yeah, you're not sure what's wrong, but the house is not getting built, right? It
Yes.
keeps collapsing.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So was there like I think a lot of students sometimes, they are studying like they're in 170s, but they're in 150s, and you truly need to study like you're in 150s going to
Sure.
160s. So, Levi, like just looking back at your journey, what advice would you give to a student first, going from a 150s to 160s, how they should study?
Absolutely. And like I've given this spiel so many times in live classes, I'm gonna give it again. It's so important. If I have like one piece of LSAT advice I can give to people that are just starting out, it is swallow your pride and go through a foundational curriculum. Okay. Unless you're just, the world's most educated, LSAT test taker in the world, you're not going to know what all these crazy terms mean, right? Like, I didn't know what false dichotomy was. I didn't know what sufficiency for necessity was. I didn't know any of this stuff. And if you just take a million tests, it's not going to help you out. Kind of like the analogy I always like to use is for people that want to skip that really foundational learning portion and just start taking a bunch of tests, I say it's like imagine you're trying to learn advanced calculus by just taking a bunch of advanced calculus tests. Like you'll probably get a little better, but you don't know everything you need to know, graphing and algebra and maybe addition, subtraction, long division or whatever. I don't really know a lot about math, and probably shows, but you need to learn the basics first. So that's my ramble on that. Just please swallow your pride, learn the basics. Again, big plug for Seven Sage. Really great place to learn the basics before you actually move into that application portion for sure.
I'm stealing that analogy
Yeah,
because it's
please do.
so good. It's so good. I see it all the time, people doing more and more questions without diving in. So maybe one aspect is going to co-curriculum. What else maybe did you try to soak in when you were in 150s? maybe the concepts underlying a question. So let's say you reviewed conditional logic, you missed it again. What did you do when you were in that range to like really learn the material? Was there anything else you tried?
So something that was really, really helpful for me about that was whenever I felt like I got it, or, let's say there's a study session where like I understand this question, I understand this concept, I wouldn't move on just yet. I would make sure that I spent, at the very least, honestly, a few more days, and sometimes like even a week more than I kind of felt like I needed to make sure that it was actually locked in. Um, because even if you can get it after you've been looking at it, for an hour, 2 hours or something, that's not what's going to happen on test day. Your goal is to go into a question kind of fresh after having done something completely different and just immediately be able to recall the information that you need. So that's really the advice I would give. You go through conditional logic or causal or, set logic or something like that, put it down for a day or two, come back to it again. And if it still feels like it's easy, then you move on. But don't just trust yourself like the first time it clicks. You really have to develop that level of consistency.
I love that. Consistency is what you go for, and you test it out in a few days to if it really stuck or if you just remembered your explanation the same day. Good, good. Now, after you were in 170s and you were like practicing,
Mhm.
how were you studying, when you were in that range, like high 160s to like low 170s?
At this point, especially after I'd kind of swallowed my pride and gone back to basics a little bit, I kind of viewed it as I had all of the pieces of the puzzle at that point. I didn't, need to find a new puzzle piece. It was just how do I actually fit them all together. So what I would really do at this point, the main thing I was focused on was review of my wrong mistakes. I wasn't super, super focused on volume, honestly, ever during my study, but I wanted to make sure that for each individual question, I kind of knew, what concept did I need to apply in this situation, or what approach did I need to use, what strategy did I need to use. And so that was really my main goal was make sure that I had a structured, systematic way to get every single question. Like for example, if I ever did a question and I was just like, oh, the right answer, I don't know, it kind of makes sense. It feels right. I told myself that's not enough. That is not enough in my review. I need to know, what sort of pattern is being tested in the stimulus, what sort of strategy, what sort of approach should I really use to make sure that this wasn't just a one-off thing, but that I would always get it right afterwards as well. And I won't ramble on about review process. I think it's so important, but final little review nugget of wisdom I'll drop here is I did a very similar thing in my review process that I did to my kind of fundamental, core curriculum learning process. And that was if I felt like I finally understood a tricky question, I wouldn't move on. I would actually put it aside for another day. And I would come back to it with just like fresh eyes, a fresh mind. And I would make sure that I could do it in timed conditions at that point. Because if I came back to it again and like it still felt like I really had to work for it, well, I really hadn't learned what I needed to learn for it. So that was also super, super helpful.
I really love that. I call that like reminds me of foolproofing logic games, like where you put away
Yes.
something
Yeah.
aside for a while that you think you got it now. You have to come back. I used to come
Yeah.
back a week later, so I wouldn't remember the answers. And so if I could put stars on that point, I definitely agree. It's so underrated. I also love what you were saying about not being good enough that I kind of got it. Like, that is so important. Did you notice that issue in, like, 50-50? You're like, "Oh, I kind of got it," and maybe that made you decide, "I want better odds in terms of accuracy."
I'm I've been asked that question probably 100 times at this point. It's like, oh, what do I do when I'm down to 50-50? So yeah, that was really my goal was I want to make sure that if I ever see a similar question, that I will get it right 100% of the time and that there is no risk. Like, I tend to be a very risk averse person. So I was like, if there is any chance that I'm going to miss a similar thing again, that just freaked me out, honestly. So I was like, no, I want to make sure like I have this structured approach. And another thing as well, I actually think that's where I got that study, kind of that study strategy of coming back to it. Because I started studying with logic games and I was going through the core curriculum on that. And I watched that first logic games lesson. It was like foolproof. And I was like, oh, yeah, I should do that for everything. So you just jogged my memory on that. That's crazy.
You should add that back to co-curriculum once we're done
Yeah.
foolproofing LR because no one does that
Yeah.
anymore. I agree. Maybe
Yeah.
let's talk a little about strategy. Like, how did you first think of timing? And then, did that change? Like, and everybody has a different timing strategy. So maybe like, what was your timing strategy? And if you could tell me a little bit more.
The first part of my timing strategy really what was to not worry about timing. The goal that I wanted was if I had just all the time in the world, make sure that I could get every single question right on the test. And I won't say that I got there perfectly, but I got very, very high accuracy untimed, which kind of let me know that okay, when I do start plugging in the timing, I know I can get it right. It's just a matter of how to optimize that process. And then for me, something that was helpful was I started out with more time and I would shave a little bit off on sections and shave a little bit off, shave a little bit off, to make sure that I wasn't just like throwing, a new time section at me that I was really uncertain with. So that was already really helpful. Um, but I'll say I think kind of the key final thing that was so helpful for my timing was being comfortable doing the first 10, 15 questions very, very quickly. Just because I really want to get everything right, so I wanted to double check, triple check, like quadruple check my answers, and getting comfortable with looking at question one, question two, going through it in 25, 30 seconds, thinking, oh, I see exactly why that would be the right answer, and just like trusting my gut and moving on. So, in general, kind of starting from the untimed and slowly building my way to like that full time setting.
I love that because so many people want to rush past and they keep
Yeah.
wanting to take PTs or keep thinking about timing. And I'm like, well, if your accuracy rate is only a few point untimed above timing, why are we taking more time? So what made you feel confident? Because I had trouble with also not introducing time. So what made you feel confident that I should do untimed and hold it off for a while? Because I think it builds anxiety for students to not do
Mhm.
anything time. So yeah, can you talk about a little bit of your mindset? Um, just holding off the time for a while.
The first thing that was very helpful was I gave myself a very, very long runway. And I know not everyone has the luxury of doing that, but if you do have the luxury of doing that, making sure that you're not, saying, "Oh, I'm going to figure out the LSAT. I'm going to crack this in a month or something." Giving yourself a long runway can definitely help cut down on that anxiety. Um, but also, I really think the reason that I was comfortable doing that it really comes from my background in music. Just because, I mean, that's how you're told to practice, right? Like, learn your scales, practice slowly, and then eventually you start building in that, you start playing the music faster. So, I think just seeing how successful that approach can be in other areas of my life gave me the confidence to know that this is actually the best way to learn. I shouldn't just hop right into it. Like, for anyone out there that has played a musical instrument or learned any skill, really, imagine if the first day you showed up, your teacher says, "Okay, here's a 20-minute concerto. Play it all right now. Go. Time setting." Ah, that'd be crazy, right? You'd say you're a terrible teacher, right? Don't be that person to yourself, right? Let yourself actually start out on the basics. So anyway, kind of that background really, really eased my mind knowing that that was going to be good.
I love that. I love that analogy. I'm not gonna steal that one because I'm not a music player, but so I wouldn't be able to explain it. But I have like this dance analogy. Like you're learning a dance. Are you gonna start out really fast? Are you gonna go slow first?
Yeah.
Good, good. I this like it's so wholesome to hear you. I feel like you had some great insight into studying, like,
Oh,
just
well,
started
thank you.
off the right way as well,
Yeah.
focusing on accuracy, and then also the fact that you shaved off time. You didn't go from, like, untimed to timed, and that's really the best way. What was about efficiency that you realized, "This is efficient and this is inefficient?" So what made you go, "Okay, that's the difference." Was there anything, like, if you could sum it up, yeah, what did that look like?
I really feel like there was kind of a click, like an aha moment when it kind of came to how do I actually do this test efficiently. And the final, I think, kind of one of the final pieces of the puzzle was really trusting my intuition. I've even in this interview, I've talked a lot about structure and process, and so I always wanted to make sure that I was 100% sure on every single answer choice. And I didn't want to rely on intuition at all. But weirdly enough, the very final part of my studying was kind of like dialing that back a little bit and being a little bit more comfortable trusting all of the studying that I had done, right? Because, I had seen these questions, I'd seen these concepts a million times. So if I had, maybe some really strong intuition about a question, even if I hadn't, beaten my process into the ground, just kind of trusting the work that I had already done to know that like I know how to do this. I don't have to obsess over becoming 100% certain. So I guess to say that in simpler terms, um, be comfortable for anyone out there listening. Be comfortable doing questions and being 85% sure. You know, yeah, like that's honestly for me that was the golden zone. If I'm 85% sure, that was enough to move on. Because once in a blue moon, I was going to be wrong. It just happens.
Yeah.
But the amount of time I saved by doing that, I got so many more questions right. Like that really was kind of the final, like, ah, I get it now. So,
I love that. If you're 85 in a span of like one or two PTs, you're gonna miss one. But overall, if your untimed work, as Levi's saying, was 100%, it's gonna be fine because you know what you're doing. You really do. Cool. Let me see if I don't want to miss anything amazing because I know you've had a great journey and there's so much to learn. Are there any common patterns among your students that remind you of your own journey, or you're like, I wish I could say this more? What do you see?
absolutely. Yeah, I feel like the kind of student that I really relate to the most are the people that they do really commit to the, accuracy and the untime. They do really commit to that, but they're just so scared to make that jump. And they're so scared to kind of trust their intuition a little bit. Like, a drill that I like to assign is just the first 10 questions and just rely on your intuition 100%. I call it like intuition exposure therapy because for so many people, like so many students I've talked to, this is like terrifying, actually uncomfortable because they're like, no, 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 like what if I get something wrong? So that's the biggest piece of advice I can say. If anyone out here like vibes with my study approach, study process at all, and really feels stuck on that final portion, just like throw yourself out there. It'll feel scary, like it'll feel uncomfortable. It like I was actively scared the first time I did this. The more you do it, it really is exposure therapy. You just get used to it. So
Yeah, it's like maybe like thinking of music analogy because you're a music major, like a maestro trusting that things are gonna flow because they have the basics down. Like,
mhm,
is
mhm.
that it? Like, is that
Yeah.
what?
No, I
Yeah.
mean seriously, that's huge. It's like trusting that I have practiced this portion hundreds of times, so you don't have to worry about it when the performance comes. Look, maybe there's a mistake there. We're all human. But the best thing you can do is trust the work that you've already done and not let like a bunch of, worry, getting bogged down, like not let that ruin everything else. So yeah, I think that's a great analogy.
When did you feel like, okay, I'm ready to take the test?
Never, absolutely never. The day I took the test, I didn't feel ready. So if anyone out here doesn't feel ready, but you've studied a lot, maybe you are. So
Yeah, but what made you go like, okay, I should now take it, even though like I see a lot of students going like, I'm
yeah,
not ready, and I'm like, you know. So what made you finally say, even though I feel like it is this moment? So what was that?
yeah. Nothing fancy. The past like I think 6 or 7 practice tests I had taken were all at or above my target score. So nothing fancy, but that's when I took it. So yeah,
I agree. Let the data lead the way, not your feelings, right?
yeah,
I sound the opposite of like Luke Skywalker here, but
yeah.
let the data lead the
Right.
way. Now, on the test day, you know, was there anything that happened, like anything that made you doubt yourself, like or any moment that you look back and you want to talk about you overcame?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is so I took it remote and my enlisted time, I can't remember, it was like 2 o'clock or something. And so I joined a little bit early. They actually told me to start a little bit sooner, and this terrified me. Like it wasn't a ton sooner. I think it was like a few minutes or something. But I was so thrown. So that's one thing I will say. Just if you take remote, I mean, you'll probably start on time. Be prepared to maybe start a little bit early. Like as soon as you enter that room, might be game day. Not sure if they were just running fast on my day or something, but like just be prepared for that. But other than that, I think something that really helped me kind of overcome that was in my preparation, I always tried to remind myself that stuff will go wrong on test day.
Mm.
You know, we study to make sure that nothing does, but stuff will go wrong. You'll get stuck on a question. You'll get to the end of a section and you'll be running out of time. You'll see a question and totally know that you should know how to do it in blank. That will happen. It will happen, I guarantee it. And the best thing you can do is expect that and prepare for that, like not let it throw you. Like, for example, my comparative passage on RC, I'm gonna be honest, I was flying blind. I did not feel confident on it. There are two questions to this day that just I did my best. Yeah, you know what I mean? But just because I'd kind of like mentally prepared myself for that, I was able to just kind of cut my losses a little bit, move on. In the final passage, I felt like I killed it. So there were some things that tripped me up, but just really preparing myself for that in advance just helped it feel like another day at the office, like nothing fancy.
Yeah. I agree. I think the worst thing we can do is like feel like it shouldn't feel difficult, even if you get better. A lot of students feel that it shouldn't be difficult. No, I definitely eliminated all. Like there's
Yeah.
gonna be a
Mhm.
couple, maybe I
Mhm.
eliminated all a couple. I'm down to 50-50. It's kind of what Levi's saying, expect that. It's so important to expect that. Um, did you have like a strategy if I'm down to like if I'm flying blind, like you said in comparative, here's what I'm gonna do. Like, did you already have that mentally prepared that moment in your head?
Yes. So what I practiced there, kind of what I told myself was, okay, if I take a first pass at, the question, the answer choices, and something doesn't jump out to me, I'll give myself one more pass, and then if nothing clicks, just pick what I think is best and move on. Like a tool that actually helped me was I would I would allow myself to flag honestly more questions than I really needed to flag because I would tell myself, okay, I'll come back to it later. Like and most of the time I wouldn't have the time, but just telling myself I could come back really helped me be prepared to if you get down to a 50-50 and you're stuck, just pick something, move on. So I did like actually practice that as a strategy.
I love that. And expecting that and practicing that is so, so important. Expect things to be hard, as Levi's saying, practice that. And I also love that you lied to yourself.
Yeah.
It is that is way more common.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
it helps you
Yeah.
that anxiety. Because is there a part of your brain that's like freaking out when you're doing it? Absolutely.
My first section, I feel like I like blacked out, honestly. Like I have no clue how it went. I was terrified. It took me a little bit to settle into a rhythm, but it was okay in the end. So,
Well, I definitely think that's like a big thing to take away in the test. Things are going to go wrong. Expect that, have a plan for it. And like Levi's saying, practice that. Practice that as well. So once you are done with LSAT, is there anything about your journey that you want to add before I pivot to your teaching, like briefly?
the biggest thing I would say is for anyone out there that is feeling stuck, that feels like they're at a plateau, do not be afraid to just totally shake it up. Try something new. Try something crazy that feels uncomfortable. Because if you're stuck, whatever you're doing obviously isn't working. So the worst that can happen is nothing, right? So like don't be afraid to just try something new if you're feeling stuck.
Completely agree. What do you have to lose? You're stuck
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point. So once you're done with your LSAT, and by the way, what was your score? I should have asked that
Oh,
question.
that's yeah. I ended up with a 177. So
Can you celebrate that moment? You got that
thank you.
score. What made you pivot to teaching?
So I do have a degree in music, but it is a music education degree. So teaching has, always been a part of my life. Like my dad was a school teacher, my mom, my sister's a teacher, my granddad was a teacher. My uncle also teaches. So it's just been a really big part of my family. And I did a lot of music teaching before I moved over to the LSAT. So it's just it's something I've always loved. I've just been really passionate about, and so getting to kind of combine. I'm a nerd. I think the LSAT's fun, and getting to combine that like with something that I really enjoy anyway is it was a very like smooth transition. I think kind of into that.
Yeah, and it shows, right? Like students do love you. I've seen
Oh,
some of your work. Like you're a very good teacher.
oh, well, thank you.
Now, once you started teaching, did you look back and like you're like, "Oh, I think about, this aspect of the test differently." Um, was there
Yeah.
like one moment that you wish you could share with your student? Like maybe you didn't do, but now you see it differently? What would that be?
This is going to be the most like no duh tip at all. Actually practice RC, please. Like, right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, right.
Oh,
Yeah, just
me too.
yeah, no, it's like I don't know. I just kind of had this mindset that it's like, oh, it's just easier to learn LR, RC, it's just vibes or whatever. And when I finally started trying to figure out how do I teach RC, the biggest thing that I did was really redouble my efforts in the core curriculum portion of RC and learn the passage types. Actually learn the passage types. I got so much better at RC and I felt so much more consistent on RC when I did that. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, leading up to my test day, I could miss sometimes on RC. Like I think the second to last PT I took, I got like a -6 on one of my RC sections. Um, and I was like in the right headspace or something on test day, so it was fine. But that could still happen. Now that I've actually bothered to learn the passage types and look for those patterns, I mean, my RC, not only do I have like a higher ceiling, I don't like bottom out anymore. So that's the big ramble. Do RC, learn the passage types. I swear it just makes everything so much more standard. So yeah, big point there.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think RC co-curriculum is underrated.
Yes.
But you
You
also
know,
notice like when you teach an LR class and then you switch to the next class is RC, the people drop. And then you
yeah,
scrap
yes.
LR, then you have like a
Mhm,
lot more people
mhm.
come and you're like, go study RC too.
Yeah, yeah.
Do not
Mhm.
neglect it.
Yeah,
Um, I totally agree. And kind of what Levi's saying, he studied patterns. It's the same thing in RC. There's patterns in RC too, just like in LR.
absolutely.
Um, I guess maybe like one last question. If you could turn around to your past self, the one that started, the one that was struggling, because that's where a lot of students are. They're tuning in. I also would tune in on my darkest moments, when I was struggling. What advice would you like give to that person, of yourself that was struggling in that moment?
The biggest thing that I would say is that this is a stressful process. This is not an exaggeration. Every single person that I know that has seriously studied for the LSAT has kind of had a little bit of a like an LSAT crash out moment. Me included, all of my friends, some of them are fellow tutors that went on to get great scores. At some point have done like, I can't do this. Like I'm not smart enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna fail. So first off, just be kind to yourself. Um, you're not unusual for feeling that way. Everyone feels that way. I felt that way, so just you're not alone in that. Um, and just expect it to happen a little bit. Expect to have some stress. And I guess final thing I'll say on that is still be a human when you're studying. I get it. We all have really big plans and big goals. We want to work so hard, but past a certain point, more stress about it, more effort, that's not really what you need, Make sure you're keeping up with friends, make sure you're keeping up with family, make sure you're taking care of yourself, make sure you're eating well, sleeping well. Don't completely fall into like the LSAT void and the LSAT vortex. Let yourself still be a person, and I swear that will improve your score, will help your stress. So just something to keep in mind.
As so beautifully said, Levi. I couldn't agree more. You're all gonna face that, but eat, sleep, do good, and it's gonna help. It's gonna help. Levi, thanks so much for sharing your story. It was inspirational. I know a lot of students will relate and will find nuggets of wisdom. just to let you all know, Levi is still part of Seven Sage, and like he's right there if you ever need more advice or questions. Levi's saying, "Please, no, just kidding."
No, no, I answer like I always love student questions, but
He does. He really does. He's very kind. So thank you for joining me. And I think one big takeaway that I got is, Levi kept some things the same, like the deep work that he was talking about coming back, but he also adapted to different scores and he gave himself time to also improve. He saw the long journey rather than just trying to force a certain timeline. So, like, respect your journey as well, as Levi did his. And it's more focused on learning because I think that's what the takeaway is. Like you were really focused on learning overall instead of like a score, from what I could tell initially.
definitely, definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us. Just a reminder, as Levi pointed out, Seven Sage has an excellent co-curriculum, both for logical
Go
reasoning,
through it.
go through it, and multiple times, because
Yes,
sometimes I went through it multiple times for different topics.
same.
RC as well, reading comprehension as well. Super underrated, as Levi talked about.
So underrated. Yeah.
So underrated. And I agree about turning to people. We also have live classes. So if you want to see someone else's way of approaching, we have instructors showing and doing questions. You can also meet your fellow, like, study buddy in the class. If you're
Mhm.
vibing with them, you can reach out and study. We also have courses. So if you want a little bit of help going through co-curriculum or after co-curriculum, so like a little bit a smaller class that's more curated and designed, we have ones that help you guide through co-curriculum, the work with it, the ones that are afterwards and advanced and intensive. So you can decide which one fits you better. And lastly, underrated, but tutoring. You get to work one-on-one with a tutor. I used a tutor at the end that helped me like get into one step. You need someone's advice. I think Levi, isn't that correct? You need someone who knows what they're doing.
Super,
Help
super.
you
Yeah.
to
And like big plug for tutoring again. Both of us, do tutoring through Seven Sage. I think overall we hopefully do a pretty good job. But yeah, getting that extra advice, getting that extra feedback, someone that can look at what you're actually doing and really dive into like how are you thinking about this? How can you change your approach? Yeah, I think can be absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, I think most people benefit of one form or the other of like working, whether it be a class or tutoring. So do check out and see which one fits you better. And it may be different types of plans fit you better at different times of your like score band, right?
Mhm.
So definitely take a look at that. As always, thanks for coming in. It was a great pleasure hosting Levi and having this wonderful conversation about his journey.
Okay. And thank you so much for having me on. Super appreciate it.
It's our pleasure, honestly. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.